ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितमेन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो नमो अनिरुद्धाय हृषिकेशेन्द्रियात्मने नमः परमहंसाय पूर्णाय निवृत्तात्मने स्वर्गापवर्गद्वाराय नित्यं शुचिसदे नमः। नमः हिरण्यवीर्याय चातुर्होत्राय तान्तवे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So today is the 23rd of July, and we are continuing our discussion on Sri Siksastakam. The Siksastakam prayers are very, very special. They were offered by Sriman Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself during the very end, or actually during the end of his manifested pastimes on the planet. The prayers themselves are found in the Antya Leela of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, right at the end. And we are very fortunate that we are able to have access to prayers that have been composed by the Lord Himself. And it is also quite unusual. And the reason I'm making the statement is, as we discussed in the previous session, Lord Chaitanya, despite being an extraordinarily proficient scholar who had fame, who was very well recognized for his scholarly abilities in the eastern region of India, perhaps in other parts as well. Despite all of this scholarship, Lord Chaitanya fundamentally did not write anything other than these 8 verses. And these 8 verses were shared in great confidence to his personal associates in Jagannath Puri. So Swarup Damodar Goswami and Ramananda Raya were 2 very close personal associates of Lord Chaitanya. And the substance of these verses were actually shared. And these verses were spoken, and they were also recorded by the devotees who were present. And in the manner, Lord Chaitanya used to speak one of these verses and then also give an elaborate description. Specifically in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the discussion used to continue between him and his very close confidential associates. So it was quite unusual. And we are very, very fortunate to even come across and be given an opportunity to understand the verses and understand the thoughts which Lord Chaitanya offered. And it is not unusual that he didn't write anything in one sense, because these 8 verses practically capture the entire philosophy of Krishna consciousness, to the point where if we set up a habit on a daily basis to reflect on these verses every day, if we pick up these 8 verses and we reflect on them for a moment, we read them, we will understand that they have practically covered everything that we have been discussing from Sri Harinam Chintamani. They would also cover everything that is being discussed in Madhurya Kadambini. And it would be an extraordinary source of inspiration, because we would be able to remember the purpose for which we are chanting. We would remember the purpose for our association. We would remember the purpose for which we read books. And we would also be able to completely understand the goal of life. Because when you read a verse, and if it tells you exactly what you ought to be knowing in terms of the end effect or the manifestation of the glories of being able to chant the holy name, then that's a great inspiration to have every day in the morning. So if you have spent around 3 months, the last 3 months, if we have spent time going into Harinam Chintamani, going into Madhurya Kadambini, understanding the various stages, understanding the milestones that a devotee achieves while becoming a serious practitioner, and also understanding the challenges, we would be able to fully appreciate these verses. So the purpose of my sharing is also for us to be able to eventually walk away with a clear understanding of these 8 verses, and then we will be able to pick up these 8 verses on a daily basis. And before our chanting the holy names early in the morning, this would be a fantastic meditation. This would allow us to reflect on why we are doing what we are doing and become enthused, because we will remember that this is the purpose for which we are chanting. This is the purpose for which we exist. Okay? So that was what was discussed in the previous week, but then it's a wonderful thing that if we could just set it up as something that we could reflect on a daily basis. Now, today we are going to be starting to talk about the first verse, and in talking about the first verse, we will have a discussion, and we will first read the verse and then have a discussion on the verse itself, and we will discuss it even further. The first verse is quite extraordinary. The first verse actually talks about 7 different perfections that one attains when they come in touch with the holy name. Okay, I'm going to read the verse, and if you have a record of the Siksastakam, you should also be able to read through. Cheto darpana marjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam shreha kairava chandrika vitaranam vidya vadu jivanam anandam buddhi vardhanam pratipadam purna amrita swadanam sarvatma snapanam param vijayate Sri Krishna sankirtanam. So Cheto darpana marjanam, right? The Cheto darpana marjanam is the specific verse, or rather the specific line which is being spoken here. And it is a very, very interesting line, because Chetaha is Chitta, and Chitta is consciousness. Chitta also refers to the heart. So Cheto darpana marjanam is practically the cleansing of the mirror of the heart. Right? Darpan is mirror. Cheto darpana marjanam is cleansing of the mirror of the heart. What does it tell us? It tells us that the heart in itself is a critical place in our body, which is quite obvious. Everybody knows that. And the heart is the seat of consciousness. So the heart has the ability to receive consciousness in that particular region and to pass it on to the rest of the body. It practically permeates consciousness that's available in the heart region, and the rest of the body is also completely permeated with such consciousness because of the flowing of blood. Apparently 2,000 to 2,500 liters of blood on an average day. So when it is pumping such volume, it is also pumping consciousness, because the soul exists in the region of the heart, and as a consequence, the consciousness of the person is permeated through the heart. An interesting observation is, if someone goes through, let us say, an operative procedure, surgical procedure, and if the surgical procedure requires transfusion of blood, the replacement of blood, then when they come out of such surgery after transfusion, it is said that they do experience a shift in consciousness. In other words, receiving blood from someone can influence us immensely, because that blood has been permeated with consciousness by the soul. The soul has existed in different bodies for millions of lifetimes. It has gone through all kinds of experiences, good, bad, and sometimes great trauma. And the soul carries all kinds of dysfunctional memories in consciousness. And we live today's life based on those memories. We constantly reflect on what we were in the past and then bring it to the present, and we live through those experiences. We watch life through those experiences, and as a consequence, our own consciousness is quite healthy if we were to quite unhealthy, if we were to simply reflect on what our past has been. Because millions of lifetimes, we've had all kinds of experiences. And every kind of experience has an influence on the consciousness, because it's almost like painting the consciousness in different colors of experiences. And then when we have that particular mirror, which has been strewn with all these levels of consciousness and experiences, we view ourselves through that mirror. And the distorted reflection of ourselves, which is based on our past experiences over several lifetimes, is what we take as our personality. This is what we experience. This is what we allow others to experience, because that's who we are. Okay? And this is again the point which I was trying to mention, was this region of the heart is so critical, because if there's a transfusion, the blood transfusion from someone who has contaminated consciousness can contaminate our thinking process. Similarly, there has been some behavior which has been reported of people who undergo organ transplant, especially the heart transplant and so on, where there's a clear shift of behavior because of such a traumatic event of also replacing the heart, because the consciousness there permeates. I remember that when my spiritual master, my Guru Maharaj, when he was in the hospital toward the end, when he was interred and when he was, I think he had to undergo an amputation because of the melanoma that was afflicting him on the foot. And at that time, there was a blood transfusion. He practically was not as sick because of the operation or anything like that. The moment they gave a blood transfusion from the hospital, he became sick. The blood which they gave from some other person, because the person, my spiritual master, he was very advanced soul, and as a consequence, he was very sensitive to what was going on. And the moment he received blood during the operative or surgical procedure, the consciousness became contaminated. Then there were devotees who gave him blood, and he felt better immediately, because the transfusion which was given was immediately responsive in being able to help him recover faster. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because the consciousness that we have in our heart is responsible for even physical discomfort and disease. So that's why it is very important for us to understand who we are. We are none of those experiences from the past. We are none of those identities that we see through the mirror of the heart. The mirror of the heart is contaminated with all kinds of identities from the past. It's a distorted reality of who we are. And that reality is actually quite distressful. It is very distressful because it causes grief. Even the so-called happy identities of this world eventually cause grief at some point or the other. What to say of real trauma? So this is not a consciousness. So when we chant the holy names, the first perfection that's being given to us is Cheto Darpana Marjanam. The mirror of the heart is cleansed. And what happens when the mirror of the heart is cleansed? When the mirror of the heart is cleansed, one is able to see who they are very clearly. And this is a recorded observation. This is the experience of devotees who have practically gone through the process and have attained higher levels of consciousness. So at the stage of Nishtha, when everything clears up and the heart becomes clear, the mirror of the heart becomes clear, one is able to see in the mirror of their heart their original identity. In other words, as they progress from Nishtha to Bhava, not necessarily at the stage of Nishtha, but Nishtha to Bhava. Right? They're able to see, they're able to recognize who they are. Slowly, steadily, information starts coming through. They are able to see that, oh, this is not me. The person who stands in front of the physical mirror before heading out to work, before heading out anywhere, is not me. I'm not this physical body. I'm someone else. That gift of knowing who we really are is given by the holy names, because there's Cheto Darpana Marjanam. The greater the level of recognition of a devotee of their identity, the greater the devotee would be able to project such an identity in their dealings with us. They will bring that identity forth. It's almost like knowing who you are will make you act in a certain way, will make you, basically think in a certain way and act in a certain way. It cannot be hidden. That is the reason why we feel very good when we come in touch with higher consciousness. Why do we feel good when we come in touch with higher consciousness? Because such a person is projecting their original identity into the environment. They are projecting their original identity into the environment. If someone is progressively closer to the truth of who they are in Krishna's village of Braja, if they know their address, if they know who their father and mother and sisters, brothers are, if they know who they are in terms of service, and if they begin acting in such service, they will be projecting such a mood even in our dealings with them. And it also brings about physical changes. It will, just as much as contaminated consciousness, the consciousness of being traumatized, the consciousness of having phobias, the consciousness of living in the past, the consciousness of many distorted realities that we have experienced which have nothing to do with the original identity, that consciousness has a deleterious or bad effect on the body. We become sick the more and more we reflect on who we are in terms of the past. However, the opposite occurs. We begin healing even at a physical level when we start identifying and going deeper and deeper into who we are through the help of the holy names. This is Cheto Darpana Marjanam. Okay? This is a real opportunity, and there's a perfection being given by the holy name. So if we read it in the morning before we begin chanting, we will know, okay, I'm going to be determined, I'm going to do exactly what Srila Prabhupada wanted us to do, because this is Cheto Darpana Marjanam. I need to do it so that I could see my identity in the real mirror at some point. At the very least, the distortion would be minimized in the early stages. So that is Cheto Darpana Marjanam. Okay. Now the next line says, Bhava Maha Davagni Nirvapanam. Bhava Maha Davagni Nirvapanam. See, the Bhava Sagara is a common term. Bhava Sagara is the ocean of illusion, or the ocean of birth and death. It's a repeated cycle, and it is termed here in this verse by Lord Chaitanya. He calls it Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. He's calling it Mahadavagni. What is Davagni? Davagni is a forest fire. What does it mean? The forest fire, in reality, is very intense and extraordinarily difficult to predict and control, and also very difficult to escape. No matter who the animal is, no matter how large, small, whatever the case may be, they will find it extraordinarily difficult to escape a forest fire, because it's very difficult to predict which direction it's going to spread. It is very difficult to put it out. Even if there's some dry cinder, it will catch again. That is the reason why forest fires are very dangerous. Lord Chaitanya, quite aptly, is calling our own being a part of the cycle of birth and death as Mahadavagni. It is Mahadavagni, very, very difficult to escape from this world of repeated birth and death. It's very difficult. But then the holy names are releasing us. That is Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. They are giving us release, because if the holy names are even chanted offenselessly, and I'm not talking about pure names. Pure name is a name that is chanted by the residents of Braja. Go back and remember the other classes we spoke of. The residents of Braja, when they call out Krishna, and they call out Krishna with complete knowledge of their identity, their hearts will be filled with extraordinary affection and love for Krishna. That is Shuddhanam. That is Shuddhanam, where we are calling the name of Krishna and we are calling him with complete knowledge of our identity. But offenseless chanting is not so Shuddhanam, but it is a way before, or rather, it is much better than the offensive chanting that occurs in Anartha Nivritti. Offenseless chanting, when our identity is not fully revealed, but at the same time, we have learned not to commit offenses, and we are chanting in a steady, consistent manner. That chanting is capable of granting us liberation. Mahadavagni Nirvapanam is not a big deal. Offenseless chanting is giving us liberation. That very same liberation is cast away just as much as being very insignificant by the devotee who has received higher gifts. Understand that. This is considered to be insignificant at the stage of bhava, because what devotees experience at the stage of bhava is allowing them to even throw away the so-called liberation into the waste dump. They don't want it. They don't care about bhukti. They don't care about mukti, because they have Krishna. They don't care about either way. They are completely satisfied, and even more, they are exhilarated. They are blissful, right? Shubhada, good fortune has already risen in their lives. As a consequence, they really don't have any inclination to, celebrate liberation. They're already liberated. What is liberation? Liberation is a situation where we are liberated from an identity of the material world. If we fully assume our spiritual identity, even though we are in this body, we are liberated. Jivan Mukta. You could be in this body, but you're liberated. So why would people be so excited about liberation if they have received, love of Godhead? So Lord Chaitanya says, Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. This great ocean of birth and death, it is going to relieve us. This is a second perfection of the holy name. Okay. Now let's look at the third perfection. Right? Shreyaha Kairava Chandrika Vetaranam. Shreyaha. Shreya is good fortune rises. Good fortune rises, which is bhava. Right? Good fortune has risen. Right? And Kairava Chandrika Vetaranam. Kairava is white lotus flowers, or white lilies, white lotus flowers. Right? And when the white lotus flowers, they blossom when moonlight enters them, or rather bathes them with moonlight. So our relationship with the Lord and our creeper of bhakti is compared to these white lotus flowers. And these white lotus flowers, they begin blooming when the cooling moonlight of the holy names hit them. So when we call up the holy names and our heart lotus begins opening up and starts revealing the different levels of engagement in the spiritual sky and the different levels of inspiration that we have in the spiritual sky and our own connection, then that particular statement is the perfection which is being given here by Lord Chaitanya, where he says, Shreyaha, good fortune. Good fortune rises when Bhava is there, because bhakti begins at Bhava. Okay? Bhakti does not begin before that. Real bhakti begins when we are able to chant the Shuddhanam. Shuddhanam begins when our identity is very clear, because you cannot really be calling ourselves completely perfected when we have amnesia of who we are in the spiritual sky. When everything is cleared out, then Shreyaha Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam, right? Shreyaha Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam, Shreyaha, good fortune rises, and then this particular white lotus, just as the white lotus blooms, the cooling rays of the holy names would make our own bhakti creeper and the white lotus in our hearts bloom. That is this particular verse. Shreyaha Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam. This is the other perfection. Then Lord Chaitanya says, Vidyavadu Jivanam. Vidyavadu Jivanam. There is no ignorance. It's Vidyavadu Jivanam. One is filled with transcendental knowledge. You see, one is actually quite happy when they come in touch with knowledge. Knowledge of when someone's suffering is going to end also makes us happy. That's a form of knowledge. So knowledge is quite liberating in many ways, right? Knowledge is quite liberating even when we start reading or we find some nugget, a good realization. It actually feels very good to come across and come in touch with knowledge. Even materially, when people solve a problem by reading and figure out, they may get a hack into life, they might figure out what to fix in life. Such a situation also makes them quite happy. So knowledge in general does make a person happy. But this is transcendental knowledge. Vidyavadu Jivanam. Once someone has been impregnated by transcendental knowledge, then such a person is going to live a life of transcendence. Things shift, and this is something which every one of you can attest to, right? The immaterial of which stage of development we are in Krishna consciousness, one can surely attest to the fact that our life never remained the same after we came in touch with Prabhupada's movement. Right? Every one of us can say that after we came in touch with Gauranga Mahaprabhu, after we came in touch with the process of chanting, after we came in touch with what we have been offered in our movement, our life could never remain the same. Why? Because knowledge has come in. You cannot really be going back to nonsense when knowledge has come into our life. Our life has distinctly changed, and that is experienced by everyone. And immaterial of which stage we are in Krishna consciousness, this is a very, very usual experience. It is not unusual. It's very common experience that our life doesn't remain the same. I remember that I was introduced Krishna consciousness in my teens. And when I was introduced Krishna consciousness, I was not quite serious because obviously I was in my teens and Krishna perhaps wanted me to experience a few more things, a little more stupidity, going around and experiencing life and, being able to move around and figure things out before coming back to Srila Prabhupada's movement again. And what I did find was the moment I had come in touch with the movement in a proper way, my going away, I knew deep down, even when I had walked away for some time, that I was going to go back. I knew that my life was not going to be normal. I knew that I had come in touch with something very powerful. I knew that I was going to take it up, and I knew that was going to be my life. Even though I had not taken it up seriously at the time because of my age, immaturity, whatever it is, you can call it, I was very clear that my life had changed. And this was just with a small dose. I think I associated for a short period of time and practiced for a short period of time. And that practice itself made such a big change that I decided that this was going to be my life. and I was never able to fix myself in anything. There was no way I could go back to anything after that, even though I tried moving away. So in that sense, what I'm trying to say is that knowledge is so powerful even in the neophyte or very nascent beginning stages of even coming in touch for the first time with the movement and coming in touch with transcendental knowledge. It changes us so much that we cannot really even go away from it, even though we desire to physically move away, because it has made a shift. There's already been a shift. It's so powerful. Okay, it's already made a shift. Okay, so that's what Lord Chaitanya is saying here. Is it's Vidyavadu Jivanam. It's a life of transcendental knowledge. Vidyavadu Jivanam. Anandambudhi Vardhanam. Right? Anandambudhi Vardhanam. Here, it's a very interesting comparison. Anandambudhi Vardhanam. Anandambudhi Vardhanam, Lord Chaitanya is comparing the coming into devotional service and actually becoming fully mature in devotional service through the chanting of the holy names. And all of this is about congregational chanting of the holy names. And through the chanting of the holy names, he is actually talking about, he says this is an ocean of bliss. It is an ocean of bliss. That's what he's comparing it to. Anandambudhi Vardhanam. There's a nice joke where in the early days, there were devotees who came and met Srila Prabhupada. And when they met with him, many of them had habits because of the past. It was the Western world. And everybody was seeking happiness. And when people are seeking happiness, they are trying to shift their consciousness. Whether someone wants to shift their consciousness by chanting the holy names, or drinking some alcohol, or ingesting some drug, or whatever it is, they are trying to shift consciousness. They just don't like the consciousness they have within their heart. It's not making them happy, and they want to make a change. And in that sense, there were many in the early days who were youngsters, who were Westerners, who were having habits. They were ingesting LSD. They were having all kinds of drug-related habits. So they met Srila Prabhupada, and they had to have some kind of a benchmark for them to understand what this movement was all about. So they wanted to understand, what is it? I'm already on a trip. I'm already on some kind of a trip. If I have to make a shift to what you guys are doing, I need to know what this is going to be in relationship to that. So their comparison and their benchmark was that if you're going to talk about happiness, tell me in terms of LSD-induced happiness. I know what is LSD-induced happiness. That was in their mind. So if I have perhaps, whatever it is, the quantity, 1 gram of LSD, and it gives me, or one particular experience, and it takes me this high, okay, or rather it is like of a certain quantity, what is it which you people are offering? Srila Prabhupada, despite his conservative background and his age, he was extraordinarily compassionate, and he was extraordinarily open to receive all these young personalities and to give them, the highest gift possible in existence. So Srila Prabhupada used to very patiently answer them. He used to say that if this is what you're experiencing through a drug, okay, what I am going to give you is like an ocean of LSD. You could drown in that. It's like an ocean of LSD. That's the level of happiness. So just to give you a light, some brevity, some light humor on this Anandambudhi Vardhanam, Lord Chaitanya compares this to an ocean of bliss. And this particular understanding of the ocean of bliss cannot be understood unless we understand what is happiness. Because we ourselves, until we come into transcendence, do not know what is happiness in life. You see? Happiness sometimes in scriptures is compared to a man who is very thirsty. He's traveling through a parched desert, and he comes across an oasis, and he has this extraordinarily cool, refreshing water to drink to quench his thirst. Okay, that is happiness. Why? Because in the human experience, the mitigation or the elimination of suffering is happiness. That is our experience. We really haven't really touched upon real happiness ever until we come in touch with transcendence. So all these comparisons of happiness comes from the mitigation of suffering. Okay? But real happiness, which Lord Chaitanya is talking about, is an ocean of bliss. He is calling it Anandambudhi Vardhanam. Okay? Yeah, Anandambudhi Vardhanam. is, and it keeps increasing. That is the beauty. It is an ocean of bliss which keeps increasing in scale. Okay? He is not referring to anything minimized. He is not talking about a river. He is not talking about a pond. He is saying it's an ocean. Okay? Then the next one, which is there, is Pratipadam Purna Amrita Swadanam. Pratipadam. See, every step that we take in the material sky is filled with danger. Every step that we take is filled with danger, and it can incarcerate us in different ways. But every time you call upon the holy names, it is Purna Amrita Swadanam. Pratipadam. Every step is Purna Amrita Swadanam. You're going to experience extraordinarily nectarian bliss. Purna Amrita Swadanam. It is not mixed, it is pure. Purna Amrita. Okay? Purna Amrita Swadanam. So, Nama Sankirtan is basically fulfilling this purpose as well. Purna Amrita Swadanam. Then the last line says Sarvatma Snapanam. What is the writing in Siksastakam? The translation goes Sarvatma Snapanam. The subtle and gross contaminations attendant upon the material conception of life have quite devoured the spiritual soul. But these material diseases can at once be terminated by chanting the holy name. When the soul, released from his material designations, is eager to reach Lord Krishna, Laulyam, he engages in devotional service under the cooling shade of Lord Krishna's lotus feet. Complete protection. Okay? He comes in touch with Krishna, there's no going back after that. And as a consequence, he is engaging in devotional service in complete protection. Now, one more addition here, which is written by my spiritual master, is from Bhakti Sandarbha by Jiva Goswami, Srila Jiva Goswami. And in the Karma Sandarbha, Atayeva yadi apyanya bhakti kalo kartavya tada kirtanakya bhakti samyoganaiva. This means that although it is required in Kali Yuga to practice the 8 limbs of devotional service, they have to be performed in conjunction with chanting. Kirtanam, chanting, has to be introduced for anything in our line. It has to be performed. In Kali Yuga, if you're worshipping the deity, you have to chant the mantras, call upon the holy names. If you're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, you're coming in touch with the holy names. If you're associating, you are obviously doing congregational chanting. And then everything practically, be it Padasevanam, Kirtanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, it is all in accompaniment with the holy name. Because without Kirtan and without the chanting of the holy name, there is really no hope in Kali Yuga. So that is the summary which Lord Chaitanya has given in the first verse, which I'm going to read again, and then we'll open up for questions. Cheto darpana majjanam, bhava maha davagni nirvapanam, shreyaha kairava chandrika vitaranam, vidyavadu jivanam, anandam buddhi vardhanam, pratipadam purnamrita swadanam, sarvatma snapanam, param vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. Okay. So that was the first verse of the Siksastakam, and I'll quickly summarize. I started out by saying that it is very critical for us to read the Siksastakam on a daily basis. If we read the Siksastakam on a daily basis, it will inspire us to proceed towards the benchmarks and the goals and the milestones that are being offered by our process. We will be enthused. We'll be able to reflect on this verse. The 8 verses of the Siksastakam practically capture the entire gamut of what Krishna consciousness is all about. If we were to take it up and reflect on it on a daily basis, it will enthuse us, it will propel us, and we will be able to inspire ourselves, and we'll be able to move forward in the chanting of the holy names. So that's the first point we wanted to make. Please make this a daily habit, and our own sharing on Mondays and Thursdays is going to facilitate giving us a complete understanding of what this is. Okay, so that is the first thing that we want to talk about. The second is we spoke about the 7 different types of perfections that the holy names offer, and which is exactly what Lord Chaitanya has spoken about in the first verse, right? So we go all the way from cleansing of the heart, which is anartha nivritti, right up to swimming in an ocean of transcendental bliss, which is, prema, at the lotus feet of Krishna. And he has given us this entire beauty of all the things that happens when a person takes up the chanting of the holy names. It starts with clearing up Cheto Darpana Marjanam, revealing our original identity, so that we could move forward, and then one step after the other. Okay, I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to see if you have any questions. I would encourage you to post your questions during the class, so that this way I would be able to view them and be able to answer them as soon as I conclude. And you can simply keep posting. Okay, before we come to other questions of this week, you can post. I will answer a question that was missed. I think it was by Sudhakar Krishna Prabhu in the previous session. And the question that he had was that I had spoken that the weeding process in Krishna consciousness is extraordinarily effective. And the context in which I had said that was that if a process is indeed potent, it should have the ability to encourage participants who are very serious. It should also have the ability to remove those who are not serious and who are, particularly kind of not taking advantage and in fact letting go. You cannot really have a situation of extraordinary opportunity and also powerful and most potent and highest placed goal, and also have practitioners who can all be of different levels. It cannot be. It has to be that everybody is striving towards the high standard, but they're striving sincerely. Now, why is this weeding process even spoken about? Because how does Krishna weed people out in our movement? Okay, yes, Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya opened up the doors of the spiritual sky. They said we will not be discriminating. This mercy is going to be offered to everyone. Okay, everyone is going to have an opportunity to receive mercy. Everyone is going to have an opportunity to move forward. There's no discrimination whatsoever, right? And in such a situation, everybody can come forward and have all advantages that are being offered by the movement. Okay, you have association, you have the volume of literature, you have coming in touch with transcendental discussions, you have association, all kinds of opportunities are open and it's available for everyone. However, Krishna says that I am going to give you whatever you desire. I have given you the opportunity, I have set up the environment, and I'm going to give you what you desire. If we take advantage of the opportunity, if we take advantage of the environment and we make progress, then Krishna gives us what we desire. On the other hand, even we have been given all these opportunities, we are in a certain environment, but we do not take advantage, or rather we are less motivated or even sometimes abusive of what is going on and being given to us, where we make aparadh and we commit offenses, then we ought to be weeded out. Okay, and that particular facility is also given by Krishna, because aparadh is a situation where we have forgotten Krishna. So Krishna says, I will facilitate you if you want to remember me. I will facilitate you if you want to forget me. He says this in 15:15 in the Bhagavad Gita. He's very clear. He says, I will help you. I'm sitting in your heart. If you want to remember me, you want to come to me, you want to make advancement, I will make every opportunity open to you. I'll open all doors. I'll remove all obstacles. On the other hand, if you want to forget me, I will facilitate that. So that is the weeding process. Our own desires, because of offensive nature, helps us position ourselves where Krishna says, okay, you want to forget? Forget me. That's not a problem. That's what I meant by saying that. Okay? So it doesn't mean opportunity is not available. Mercy is. Opportunity is available for everyone without discrimination. However, there's a weeding process. Okay, there's a question here. Sankirtanam means congregational chanting or individual chanting? I would say Sankirtanam in literally means congregational chanting. However, individual chanting is a given. Individual chanting is a given. So congregational chanting is when people experience, the bliss of being able to chant with others, being able to serve with others, or who are also like-minded. However, it is a given that there is individual chanting. Because without individual chanting, one cannot really appreciate congregational chanting. That's something which we discussed in Harinam Chintamani, we discussed it in Madhuri Kadambini, that depending on ruchi, real ruchi, if someone has real taste, it doesn't matter. They can sit with their bead bag and relish the holy names. If they do not have real taste, they need an orchestra for them to relish the holy names. Okay, so that's the difference. But here, we are talking about the context of congregational chanting. Srila Prabhupada started congregational chanting in Tompkins Park in New York City. That's how the movement started. When he started congregational chanting in that place, people became attracted. That was the recommendation of Lord Chaitanya and Chaitanya Charitamrita, that congregational chanting is our means. So we chant and then we develop this through the congregation. However, what happens for us to be able to understand and go deeper, one has to take up japa, and japa is the main process. Chanting, that is the reason why there's such emphasis. We don't really take vows that, okay, I will do some congregational chanting. We take vows for japa. Once we take vows for japa and we go very deep, we're also able to relish congregational chanting. And Sankirtanam is also preaching. Because what happens when someone is sharing katha, like we are doing now, what are we doing? We are enthusing others to chant, aren't we? So this is also Sankirtanam. This is Sankirtanam because it is facilitating the main process. It is facilitating everybody congregating together and focusing on the holy names. Any more questions? I'm going to give 1 minute. Okay, I'm going to stop right here because I don't see any further questions. If there are any, please post them to the group. Write to me. You know, I'm still lagging behind on some of the emails that you have sent. Some of you have sent. I will get to them as soon as I can. And we'll talk again. Okay? Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna.